Hello, Steeler fans, and welcome back to another episode here at the SteelerFury.com podcast. I'm your host, Jeremy Coleman. You know me as Smith is Smoking on the message boards, joined by the best host that money cannot buy, and Will Massasak, you know, as Bradshaw to Ben, and Corey Karbowski, you know, as Corey39. Will, what are we sponsored by for the Wild Card Weekend edition? What are we sponsored by?
Hey man, it's a playoff edition. It's a rarity. There's only two more rare shows in all of Steeler Fury Pittsburgh Steelers show. Uh, this is Madonna. It's not like that Madonna, nor the one from football. It's just a beer in a gold and blue can.
All right.
But cheers to your Pittsburgh Steelers who backed into the playoffs somehow after losing to two 2-10 teams. Don't ask.
Well, you know, the rarity is we actually backed in. You know, like I said a few times, you know, throughout this year, it's like, as we always try to make a playoff push, we always need help to get in. Well, God darn, we got it finally. Thank you, Mike Vrabel. Is your last act as a Tennessee Titans head coach, which, by the way, real quick, that's bullshit. Vrabel should have never been fired. He's one of the best head coaches out there. He's just been stuck with some below average talent once they got rid of A.J. Brown. But thank you, Titans, for the nod moving forward. We appreciate it. It was really nice to watch that Sunday night football game thinking, I don't really care what happens here. So just nice to finally get in without having to wait till the absolute last second of a game. We don't need some obscure tie between the Chargers and the Raiders to get in the playoffs. You know, we're just in. So it's great. And of course, we head up north to frigid Buffalo. So lots to obviously look into this game. I'll say the biggest takeaway from this past week, obviously, was we lost TJ Watt. We will not see him in Buffalo. That's just huge right there. Obviously, this team goes as TJ goes. So it'll just be really interesting to see how that defense looks. Because Buffalo, they like to run the ball more now. And not that, but we'll get into that. So anything else from this past weekend against the Ravens we need to really take away, gentlemen?
I mean, the Steelers are. I mean, whoever said Mike Tomlin has a horseshoe up his ass is like, you know, they played, two defenses, like one that can't stop the pass, and one that can't stop the run, and then get Baltimore in the last week where they're not playing any of their guys, and it felt like watching the game against the Ravens, like there was a lot of hitting, but like the pace of that game, like the energy level of it seemed so low, even from the Steelers' point of view. And some of that's the weather; it was miserable. But I don't know. I'll make it more like a question. Like, what do you guys make of that victory? Do you feel like, okay, the Steelers went out and they took care of what they needed to do, or do you feel like it's sort of a game that almost didn't matter? Like, not that they wouldn't have gotten the playoffs, but I mean, did it feel like a game that was a really satisfying win to you?
I think the way you're I don't think it's like an evaluation game. I don't think you can really have too many takeaways from this game. I mean, you can look at specific players like Eric Rowe, I think played pretty well. I mean, we were talking about him a little. And, you know, Mark Robinson always seems to show up for those Baltimore games. And, you know, it might even be a bit of a preview for how next week's game could go with inclement weather. So I guess you could look at that a little bit from that point of view, but when looking at like how well our systems work, like how well our schemes on offense work and how well our defense does the shutting, we played the Ravens different than everyone else already, and the offense is going to rely on the run game. So we already knew that. So other than that, I'm not really sure how much you can take away from this game other than it might be bad weather.
Yeah. Yeah, no, tend to agree. Like I said, you know, the biggest thing is, you know, it sucks that we lose TJ, you know, because it's not like the game was in hand yet either, you know. It was a one-score game pretty much the entire time. So, you know, he needed to be out there to secure the victory. And, you know, when I saw it happen, I was just like, it would be another friendly fire bullshit, you know, like it's not like him on a non-contact just going down or something. It would be like our 325-pound nose tackle with, you know, leg whiplashing him. I was just like, ugh, gotta be kidding me, but it is what it is, and we will not have him for this game in Buffalo. So let's just dive right into Buffalo. Corey led on to this a little bit here. The weather is going to suck.
That's
Like
one way
there's
to
no
say it.
other way to put it. So the current forecast for this game in Buffalo is 25 mile per hour winds, up to 52 mile per hour gusts, which is just nuts when you think about it. So it's already going to be 23 degrees. It's going to feel like 7 degrees, and we're going to have some light snow. So gentlemen, how does this weather potentially, impact how this game is going to be played?
I mean, I've been in the snow probably twice in my life, but
Southern
I
Bowl.
will say that this is a complete game changer in my point of view, because we are not a legitimate passing threat. Mason Rudolph can hit short passes. He can hit an open guy on shallow concepts. He can hit a speed out. Anything that's not aggressive, anything that's not too complex, he can hit. But Najee Harris has been running his tail off lately, and we know that Jaylen Warren can run the ball too. Now, Jaylen Warren showed some ball security issues with the rain, which could go back to small hands, whatever. He had ball security issues when he was first coming in. So, but, if you have Najee running the ball how he has been, really, especially in however bad the weather is, probably just keep giving the ball to Najee. So I think it's a big deal. I think it's a very big deal. I think if this game is played in 80-degree September weather, I think with how these two teams stand, we'd have a very low chance of winning. But with how mucky they could make this, and with how the Bills haven't really been playing that well as of late either, then I feel like this is kind of like the exact weather we'd want to drag them into a slugfest.
Okay, Will.
Yeah, my problem with that is that the Najee Harris, and his running, the results have been there, but I think that's kind of a mirage. I mean, it just doesn't you have to consider the context of the running numbers that he put up in the last couple of games of the season. Just who they were playing and how they were playing. I'm not sure, as you said, it's really something you can use to build your evaluation on. That suddenly the Steelers are a great running team, despite the fact that they've been kind of a mediocre running team all year, especially with Najee Harris. So that Seattle game, I don't think I would take anything from what you did as a run offense against them, having seen what they did to other opponents this year. They just, like, the week before the Steelers were there, I think they might have even got gashed more in the run game. So I just think the difference in this game is, yes, if you maybe could have made a couple of plays downfield as Mason Rudolph, in the deep intermediate and intermediate throws that maybe aren't going to be available to you now. That means that whatever loosening up that the deep balls of Mason Rudolph have done to defenses the last few weeks is not going to be in play. I think defenses are going to make you prove that you can throw it 30 yards or 40 yards downfield, right? So that means it'll be packed in more against the run. And Steelers don't really use play action effectively. Maybe they'll pull some of that out. But it feels like the weather, I don't know. People are saying this week that it favors the underdog and it favors the Steelers because they're a running team, et cetera. But I don't know if the Steelers are a real running team. I think they want to be an effective running team, but in a playoff atmosphere against a playoff team with an elite front that the Bills offer, I think it may be more difficult than people are thinking it's going to be based on the last few weeks.
Well, and let me touch on something you just said. You mentioned play action. The problem with our play action game is I think we have 5 play actions in the entire playbook that, really work. So, and they seem to be sniffed out almost routinely every week. I mean, I think there was a play against Baltimore this past week that the defense knew, like you could just tell that edge guy was not fooled at all. He was waiting for Mason Rudolph to go out into the flat and do a little dump off to whether, I think it might have been Hayward. I think it was Hayward's play I'm referencing. Not totally accurate. Maybe, who knows? But like our play action it's the same thing every week. So it's just like at some point, like good teams are going to realize that. Like I said, the Ravens found that this past week. So it's like I question whether our play action game can even really be that effective because we don't do a lot of it. And then it's just the same play repeated out of different formations. Like our only play action pass is to a tight end in the flat. That's all it is. We haven't seen any shots go downfield this year off of play action, really, especially not lately with Mason. Just hasn't happened. If Mason's throwing it deep, it's just he's chucking it. It's not designed to play action. It's just a drop back and throw. Hopefully, there's a one-on-one matchup there. So I'm kind of with you, Will. I think the offense is going to struggle just due to the nature that we don't really have a play action game. Like even if we, struggled to run the ball or even didn't struggle to run the ball, I don't really have any confidence in us play action passing or whatever. And like you guys have alluded, the weather is going to severely limit what, if the forecast stays true, what each team can do passing. So I think you're going to see a bunch of running on both sides, and that scares the shit out of me when it comes to James Cook, because I don't think we have anyone that can run and keep up with him from a front seven perspective. So
I kind of, I'm not necessarily arguing that, the weather is going to make us a good running team.
mm-hmm.
I'm looking at it more as like an equalizer where, if you ask anyone in the NFL, who are you more scared of passing the ball, Bills or the Steelers? Every single person is going to say the Bills. So if you just, in a vacuum, if you just make it harder for the Bills to pass the ball, we already can't pass the ball really as it is. It's not like the wind's going to really severely stop us. I mean, George Pickens isn't going to get too many shots. And if he does.
But Corey, here's the thing. What's the difference? Why has the running game been more effective since Mason Rudolph has been the quarterback? Right? It's a rhetorical question. The answer, is that the defenses respect the pass a little bit. Even only a little bit more than Kenny Pickett or Mitchell Trubisky, they respect the fact that there might be deeper shots or something in the middle of the field. And if you take that away, this defense is going to come right back down to where they were. Like our memories as Steeler fans so short that you can't remember what it was like a month ago when the Steelers couldn't run the ball because defenses were sitting on all the short routes and sitting on the line of scrimmage, and it made it really hard to run. That's the sort of vision that I have for,
Well, and that's still true, but the weather taking away our pass game hurts, the Bills more getting their pass game taken away than us. I mean, this is, it's not a very advanced stat. There's definitely more context, but the Bills give up the 5th most yards per carry in the NFL. I mean, that's not nothing.
They had a bad stretch. Well, this is why I was looking earlier to see if Daquan Jones was out, because at one point they lost Matt Milano and Daquan Jones. And they had a 5-game stretch where they couldn't get it together. They brought in another cornerback and they tried to figure out who was going to play linebacker in Milano's absence, etc. So they were really bad for a stretch, but they seem to have really got it together. So yes, go ahead. I mean, for yards per carry standpoint.
But I'll say this too, and when we look at James Cook, I'm sure Will can speak to this, but when you get in the snow, that's going to slow you down. So yeah, James Cook's fast, James Cook's agile, but even that's going to be nipped in the bud, where I might imagine that we see more Leonard Fournette, maybe not more than James Cook, but we'll see a heavier dose of Leonard Fournette just because, this game could end up being, with how the weather looks, dive. Let's see how close we are to the first down.
Well, and let's kind of dive into matchups here too, because we're diving into a strategy of how we're going to do this. I mean, in my opinion, the tight ends are going to have the biggest job of the week, because if we're going to have a chance of maybe potentially breaking a run outside or having that extra blocker block down on someone to create a lane, this is the week where Darnell Washington, Pratt Fryermuth, Small Hayward, Light Hayward. I can't remember his first name for some reason.
Light Hayward. Hayward Light.
Man, that's sad. I can't remember his name off the top
Connor.
of my head.
Connor, yeah,
thank you. God, that's pathetic.
God, none of us were like, yeah.
But I mean, you're gonna have him coming in motion. He needs to be able to hit a guy on a block on the move. So just the intricacies of finishing out your blocks this week are going to be huge. But it's that difference between averaging 3 yards a carry and maybe getting that 5 or 6 yard carry that makes the next run even that much easier. If the run is going to be emphasized that much more. But in turn, I mentioned this a little bit, we only play action pass to our tight ends. So those guys need to be able to catch balls this week too. Hopefully those guys can serve dual purposes this week. I think we may have to lean on them, because if the winds is that bad, we are not going to be taking shots deep. We aren't going to be taking long shots out to the sideline. So those guys need to be able to, even if it's just sitting down in zones and catching those little 4 and 5 yard dump offs, that's the type of football that could provide a winning recipe for the Steelers this week. So,
and I want to add on to that real quick.
Yeah, Corey.
You know, me especially, but Will also. I feel like all of us, we're huge Darnell Washington fans. We have been. This is a game where, if you want to use him and kind of like take advantage of his skill set, this is it, because this is a game where you put him on the backside and, you can come back and run towards him and make it a new strength, or you can do whatever you want with him. But you could go for those play actions away from him, have him do the little leak where he just kind of turns and waits. And, a guy like that's the kind of guy who's going to thrive in like a, messy, snow-filled game, because he's so big and so strong that once he gets his legs churning, that's a guy who's going to move faster than everyone. He's not touching the ground as much. It's just these long strides. So, I mean, that could be a legit weapon in the receiving game, but I don't really have much faith in us doing that, because we haven't showed all year that we look at him as a yak threat like he was in college. We haven't even really given him the opportunity. I think he's gotten 5 targets, and I think he's taken 3 for first downs after carrying some guys with him. But, you got to kind of scheme for a guy like that, because he's so, he's kind of stiff in the hips. That's a natural disadvantage of a guy that big. But, you get the advantage of the run after the catch. So that's something that I could see with him if we decided to push for that working out.
Will?
I mean, I think the biggest matchup is the Steelers' run game against the interior line of Buffalo. Buffalo's, linebackers, off-ball linebackers have had some issues. Matt Milano, who's their best linebacker, is injured and out for the year. And Tyrell Dodson has been, substituting for him as a starter. He's also injured this week. They're not sure that he is going to be 100% on Sunday. He may in fact play, but if you get deeper than that, then you're starting to get into Tyler Matakevich might have to play meaningful snaps, which would be a problem. So it's like you'd think, all right, well, they're having some issues at linebacker. Maybe we can attack them. But the problem with that is their defensive front, like the interior linemen that they have on this team, are kind of insane. For 3 years now, they've been stockpiling defensive linemen. Like, they cut guys who are, probably better than most linemen on most teams. Right now, they have Ed Oliver and Daquan Jones as their starters. Poona Ford and Tim Settle. I remember Tim Settle was a player at one point that everybody on Steeler Fury wanted the Steelers to draft as a space-eating interior lineman. And Linval Joseph is theoretically their third string. So they have 5 guys they rotate who are fantastic football players. And in a game like this where, the Steelers are looking to interior run, they're not really a team that's built to run outside. And besides, Buffalo has the speed to kind of negate anything outside, like screens and outside runs. So they're really going to need to run the ball in the interior, and that's a tough ask for any offensive line against them, despite the fact that, at some points this year they've had some issues against the run. I still feel like in a playoff game with that kind of talent on the defensive interior that you're starting an uphill task.
Fair. It's fair. You mentioned their interior defensive line depth. How about their depth on the edges too? I mean, they start Greg Rousseau and Von Miller, who can still get after the pass rusher or whatever. He's more brought in as a pass rusher. He doesn't really play base down.
About to say, I would hope I see Von Miller this game for how the forecast is looking.
Right. But then, AJ Epinesa is a guy who's, kind of steady Eddie. He's not, all pro, a Pro Bowler by any means, but he's solid.
He's a bit like our Nick Herbig this year.
To say that again?
He's a bit like our Nick Herbig this year.
Yeah.
He goes in, no egregious mistakes.
Yep. Solid wave player. But then honestly, a guy who's played pretty well for them is also Leonard Floyd. He's racked up some sacks this year in some games I've watched. He's still pretty slippery when it comes to rushing the passer, not as much against the run. But, they almost play Rousseau and Epinesa on obvious running downs and then switch out to Floyd and Miller a lot of times on passing downs. So they're deep and they can be fresh. So that can always be a little bit of an issue in a game like this, especially, if Pittsburgh struggles to run the ball and they have to pass that ball in like 3rd and 8. It's like that. Those are the situations where I don't have a lot of confidence or whatever. Because after all, Isaac Seumalo, according to Pro Football Focus, hasn't given up a sack all year. So that's a joke, Steeler Nation. He
that is
clearly has. And that just goes to show you how far PFF has kind of slipped, in my opinion. But anyway, had to slip that in. That was just too damn funny this morning when we saw that. So any other matchups we need to be on the lookout for? Real quick, I will run through kind of the injury report. I neglected to do that before we started. Deion Dawkins had a light practice. It'll be interesting to see if there's any lingering issue from this past week with his hand. Kind of a crucial thing when you need a block. But I mean, hell, this could be a game where you might be able to put a damn glove on the thing if it's going to be 3 yards in a pile of dust type of game. But Gabe Davis did not play. Still hampered a little bit by a knee injury that he's kind of been working through. Rasul Douglas did not practice today, another knee injury deal, working through that most of the year. Tyrell Dodson, you did mention him. He did put in a light practice today, so if I had to guess, he'll play. Yeah, probably try to play through it too. But boy, I can't remember who it was that I saw in the national championship game the other night. He was trying to play through something, and boy,
the running back Johnson for
Dylan Johnson. Thank you, but he was trying to gut it out. But so it's just like you have to wonder for a linebacker who has to use that shoulder all the time on every single tackle for the most part, just how long he can hold up against that type of thing. Be a game where that Toradol comes in real effective, but
if you can take it without having an adverse reaction.
Sure.
Certain players who shall remain unnamed.
Barry say
might have played quarterback for the Pittsburgh Steelers at some point recently.
What? No. But then the other injury, I'm not too big of a concern. Taylor Rapp, their third safety, didn't practice today. Honestly, that kid's. I remember him coming out of Washington. Ironically, just talking about Washington in the national championship game. He's been bothered by injuries his entire career. A lot of it's due to just the way he plays the game. He's a big run thumper or whatever, but he's
this one. I think he fell on had the interception on the last play of the game, and he fell on the ball and hurt himself. That's
yeah.
Right. The Gabe Davis thing, I think is not so serious. That's the knee. He has a knee injury.
Yeah, he's been playing through it all year, I think. But
the minor PCL sprain. I don't know if every PCL sprain is the same, but I can tell you when my PCL was sprained, I had no problems running. The problems were going up and down stairs and stopping. So if you're running and you try to stop quickly, like you have to decelerate. So for a receiver, running his routes isn't really so. We're getting off into the route and maybe running certain kinds of routes would not be that hard, but like a stop route might be hard for him.
Yeah, and then just real quick, I'll run through the Steelers injury report. Nothing really to note. A lot of what we've normally seen. Isaac Seumalo did not practice today due to a shoulder injury. Excuse me. Not sure if that's been something he's been dealing with all year, but I think he's been getting like Wednesday off all year. So I'm not sure if that's a true injury we really need to be worried about. Obviously, TJ Watt is out. I do think the interesting one is Minkah Fitzpatrick went through a full practice today. So that's big news. Obviously, just having him back there with how bad the depth is. Well, I wouldn't say the depth has been that bad, just because they've actually risen to the occasion a little bit. But the other interesting thing to note, safety-wise, the Steelers do get DeMonte Casey back this weekend. Tomlin did allude to it in his press conference. He's not exactly sure what his workload would be, but as long as he stayed in shape, I think this would be the type of game you want him in because he loves to be that hammer meeting nail. He only got suspended because of that. So,
yeah. But maybe he'll be reluctant to lay the wood.
Those guys aren't really cut like that.
I'm just kidding. Although probably the next time he gets in trouble with it, he'll be out for a whole year.
Mm-hmm. But so the last thing, kind of highlighting those safeties or whatever, we better be ready for the tight end game too, because Dawson Knox and Dalton Kincaid ate Miami up this past week. This 2 tight end set that the Bills are starting to use more of, which ironically enough, and I'm not tooting my own horn here, but I suggested this earlier in the year, just to help them start running the ball better. And hey, look what happened. But that's a formidable duo because both of them can run and go out there and catch the ball. I mean, Dalton Kincaid, obviously the first rounder they spent on him this year. He's a very talented guy, can really run away from guys. And Dawson Knox is good in his own right, too. I was a little shocked they spent a first round pick initially, but I think with Knox, he's had a little bit more of an injury history. And Kincaid kind of has a chance to be maybe one of those generational type of tight ends just from his receiving ability and his ability to run routes and stuff. But we better be ready for that, too. So I think the safeties more than anything are going to have to handle that responsibility. If so, we've already seen our linebackers try again and just fail. So let's move on from that and try something different.
I mean, the thing is, they have the Steelers linebackers have a very formidable task because one thing I really like about Buffalo's offense is the way that the various things that they do play off each other. So their offense seems very coordinated with all the different parts. So they will run these tight end, to the middle and then out, or somehow clearing the middle, then running back either throws a running back in the flat as a dump off when there's space created for that, or that gives Josh Allen a chance to run because the linebackers are so occupied with the tight end and running back that the quarterback just takes off on you, right? And if you start worrying about condensing that space so that he can't do that to you, then suddenly, oh yeah, we got Stephon Diggs, we got Gabe Davis. So I think that they, I really like the way that they use their parts, and I feel like linebackers are in a real bind. It's like they're going to struggle to cover good tight ends. They have really good receiving running backs, and they have a quarterback that even if you do everything right, can still run the ball 15 yards. That's a tough ask for anybody, and that doesn't require throwing the ball downfield.
Fair. Any other matchups we should be kind of aware of this week, guys?
I think just like a quick one, Josh Allen versus himself. To beat the Steelers, he is not going to need to try and make the hero ball plays to, that he's fallen victim to kind of throughout this whole season. He should have nowhere near the amount of interceptions he's had if he played like the last 2 years. But it's kind of come back and come to bite him a little bit. So, the 2 interceptions is how you let a team like the Steelers upset you in the playoffs in 50-mile-per-hour gusts. If you turn over one of those in the, in your own red zone, like inside your own 20, I mean, that's a recipe for disaster, especially with how messy this game can get. So I think that might be the deciding, factor in this game is if the Buffalo can keep the ball in their hands, because the Steelers are very unlikely to turn it over. So if Buffalo can just keep the ball when they have the ball, they're probably going to outscore the Steelers. If they start fumbling or if they throw a couple interceptions or any special teams, mess ups, I think that's how they let the Steelers clip them.
Yeah, I mean, ball security in general, we've already touched on how bad the weather could be. So if it's wet, holding onto that ball is going to be paramount. It doesn't matter what side you're on. So that very well could be the thing, which team makes the less mistakes wins this ball game, just due to the weather. But so now that we're in the playoffs, we can finally talk about some playoff matchups. But before we do, I wanted to run through something and get your guys' reaction on this. So as everyone knows in the NFL, after the regular season's over, there's this thing called Black Monday that some people take way too much joy in. So that's not what we're getting at here. I want to put that out there first and foremost. However, there are now 7 teams without a head coach. Going to go with the most recently one today. And I wouldn't say this one as much as a firing, as much as I initially thought, but Pete Carroll amicably, apparently, deciding with the organization to take a step back and become an advisor. Didn't see that just because it felt like, he really enjoyed coaching.
He was, am I correct? He was the oldest coach in the NFL, I think. Was he not?
I believe so. Believe so. But Belichick's not far behind him or whatever. Yeah. So ironically, we bring up Bill Belichick. We have not heard anything there yet. Everyone's anticipating that move to happen, obviously. I'll probably go with the most shocked one was the Titans letting go of Mike Vrabel. I feel like this is a guy who put together a really good foundation and just the past few years hasn't really had the dogs to really go out there and compete week in, week out, even though the way Mike Vrabel teams play, they always play extremely hard. They play generally pretty good defense. You saw flashes with Will Levis and what this offense can do with him. Shoot, I mean, even this past week against Jacksonville, Ryan Tannehill, put it to the Jags. So, I mean, I don't know. It felt like this team was trending in the right direction. I know it hasn't showed up in the wins loss columns necessarily this year, but I was just a tad bit surprised he was let go.
I don't really think this was more of like a performance thing or anything like that. I think they just didn't agree on the direction of the team. Mike Vrabel's very much in the Tomlin school of thought where he doesn't want to tank. He doesn't want to send away good players. He wants to build the best team every year. And in general, that's a very good trait to have. But there is ground to stand on for the Titans GM that blowing it up when they traded A.J. Brown would have been the better move. Where if they just blew it up completely there, where they traded Tannehill, traded Henry, traded A.J. Brown, just nuke it, that probably would have been better for the Titans long term. But from what we can tell with kind of how Vrabel acted around the A.J. Brown trade and all that kind of stuff, seems like they kind of went for this two timelines thing where they traded A.J. Brown, tried to kind of recoup some value. Not recoup, just, get draft pick value. And then Vrabel was just fighting, aggressively to keep majority of the team together. So it seems like they just weren't on the same track there. And what I'm guessing happened is the Titans GM was like, listen, this team's not going to make a Super Bowl anytime soon. We need to blow it up. Derrick Henry's gone. Vrabel's probably like, don't want that to happen. And then you end up with this firing, which is more Vrabel just not wanting to be a part of a rebuild.
And I heard it was the owner. He had trouble with the personality conflict with the owner, which will also do you in as a head coach.
Yeah, I think I read something on kind of her statement kind of afterwards. She's just saying she just wanted a new perspective on this team, which, Will, like you said, that just shows you very much so that they weren't seeing things eye to eye.
Well, I will say this. It's probably good news for Will Levis because I think, he had some success this year early, but it's like so trapped in that kind of an offense, really. It's so, the old schoolness of it is just sort of like, you're not throwing a lot on early downs that are the easier downs to throw on, and you're often behind the sticks on third down. And that makes your quarterback's job, I think, a little bit harder. You're really dependent on winning with play action and stuff like that. So, yeah, it's nice to have a good running game to support you as a quarterback. But on the other hand, chances are whoever they bring in there will be slightly less Neanderthalish in their approach to offense.
But another guy kind of anticipated being let go here, Ron Rivera with the Washington Commanders. Widely speculated that this was going to happen with a new ownership group taking over this past year.
Ready for Mike Tomlin.
We'll get to that in a second, or in a future episode. Obviously kind of saw that one coming just with a change of regime, change of everything. Hell, they might even rebrand again. So who knows? That's still on the table, apparently. So the one, and I want to preface that this is fucking bullshit, but Arthur Smith being let go.
I don't know. The Falcons fans were very unhappy with him this year.
Wait, you don't get is that sarcasm, Jeremy, or?
Yeah, of course it was.
Okay. Sorry, I thought you were being serious about that. Yeah.
No. I had quite a laugh at him meeting up with Dennis Allen after the game, calling that late touchdown. That's fucking bullshit.
Oh, I'm sorry. See, I knew something happened, but I didn't know the quote. So yeah.
Yeah, he wasn't happy about that last touchdown or whatever, and I don't care whether the players went out there and didn't execute victory or whatnot. How about you field a better team, you freaking bum? And get a damn quarterback. I mean, how many times has he passed over, potential quarterbacks in like round one?
I remember round two. Passing over Fields was a big blow up because Fields is from Atlanta.
Not
and granted, you don't have to take a quarterback just because he's from the area, as we know. But Fields was already on a bit of a slide, and that probably it's rumored they might trade for him now. So
but
bit of a screw up there. Who'd they take with that pick? Do we know?
Didn't they take Kyle Pitt? No, that was.
I can find out. Hang on.
Was that 2021? Yeah.
2020, I think.
I got it. Hold on. I'm looking at the draft.
They
This
took
is the third
Pitts.
year. I really can't remember how.
2024, right?
Where
2024.
was Fields?
Well, 2024.
Oh, that's the next one. Sorry.
Yeah.
Yeah. No, that's not right. 2021.
Okay. So they took Pitts at 4, which the big uproar was, we took a tight end.
A tight end
at
instead of
4.
I was very say I wanted to say it was Pitts. So yeah. So
They also,
Arthur
Ouch.
Smith's ability to use top draft picks well. So
I mean, if they just simply took Jamar Chase who went the pick after,
yeah.
I mean, who'd we take?
Drafting is
Najee, right before Travis Etienne. Who would like to go back on that one?
Oh, I was pissed when we did it because I wanted ETN, but just because I like this speed. I've we've been wanting speed in this offense for forever. Thank God for Jalen Warren. But anyway, I just found that super entertaining after that game. Just fucking bullshit. It's like whatever, bro. Stop being such a
coaches are very obsessed with certain things like protocol and far less obsessed with like all the shitty things they're doing to make their teams bad,
Mm-hmm.
Giving Tyler Algier every carry that's under 5 yards from the sticks, and Bijan gets sent to the side.
Being the top running team in the league and drafting Bijan Robinson in the first. I mean, it's like, come on. It's like it's already working okay for you. Yeah, Bijan Robinson's a nice player, but dang, like the difference between Bijan Robinson and like the next running back you could get, in the later round would be a difference, but not worth it. Anyway,
I mean, there hasn't really been a scenario where taking a running back in the first round has paid off in how many years now? I mean, look at the Giants with Barkley. What's that netted them?
nothing.
So, I mean, the Chiefs with Clyde. I mean, you can argue about the selection if they took. There's some guy that people always say if they took him instead of Clyde, it would be different. I can't remember who off the top of my head. Jonathan Taylor. They took Jonathan Taylor instead of Clyde.
Derrick Henry's a first rounder, yeah.
Yeah, I mean that's probably the biggest one. He's gotten a playoff win.
That's a long time ago.
Yeah,
long time ago.
But then obviously there were 3 coaches that were let go during their season. Brandon Staley with the Chargers, Josh McDaniels with the Raiders, and then of course Frank Reich with the Carolina Panthers. Obviously those guys have all been they got a head start on looking ahead to who they want.
So what's the premium job? What's the job you want if you're a head coach coming in?
Chargers, I'd say.
Oh, and then the other one, wasn't Peterson let go with the Jags too?
Someone sent that, but I didn't see it.
Yeah, I don't know. I haven't actually seen a confirmation of that.
Okay, gotcha. Well, I honestly thought that would have been excessive anyway.
He fired members of his staff. So
fired members of his staff. Excuse me, I misspoke. So okay, gotcha. But yeah,
I mean, okay. So here's the good question. Once we answer that, who's the best job, we can kind of figure out where we slate in there if the Tomlin shenanigans potentially happen.
Yeah. So what do you guys think of this? Rumor out there that Tomlin might step away for a year. Let's go ahead and talk about that while we think about what you.
I think it's probably a PR move on his part to get out there to try to increase his value. I mean, it made more sense before they became a backdoor playoff team. Mm-hmm. I think if they don't finish in the playoffs or they don't get their they don't save the season to keep it from being a losing season, then maybe I feel differently about him doing that. But I will say this: I think it's I kind of feel like they need to really clean house with the coaching staff, and I could imagine a scenario where someone remained the head coach, but they changed the staff out almost completely underneath him and changed the direction of how things are done, which feels like undercutting him a little bit. But if he could go along with that, I might be into it. So from that standpoint, I think it's not the worst situation in the world if it feels like he's done coaching for right now or done coaching the Steelers for now and walks away with a year left on his contract, because that means if he comes back ever 15 years from now, if he decides he wants to come back, the Steelers are going to get compensated for that. So that part.
I mean, he's still a young guy too. That's the other thing. It's not like he's, this 70-year-old coach ready to ride off into the sunset. He's barely over 50. I think he's like 51, 52 years old.
Yeah.
So
that's like 3 Corys though.
That's not 3 Corys. Oh man, but so I mean, in my opinion, I think the best job out there is the Chargers' job. I think they've got more than enough talent to win out there. They just haven't won. Like it's some great mystery why they just can't finish out ball games. So from a talent perspective, I think that's where it is. You've got, I think, the best proven quarterback, of the group out there.
Yeah.
You've got plenty of weapons. Honestly, they're not afraid to use first rounders on skill players to give Justin Herbert what he needs. They just signed to a big extension, so he's going to be there long term. Really, I felt like the defense played better as the year went on. Just a team that was just too far gone from the get go to really make a noise. But I think the Chargers' job is just attractive in general.
I mean, I would honestly, I mean, this is, you got to take a lot of steps for this, but I think the Falcons' job's pretty enticing too. And, my plan, as we've mentioned him multiple times on the show, would be something in the range of trading up to pick 32, taking Cam Ward, and then bringing in some bridge quarterbacks. So you trade back from the 8th, where some team will be willing to trade up for some receiver or something. Stockpile some of those other areas that you need with, later picks, and then get that 5th year on Cam Ward by trading back up to 32 with your second. I mean, they've definitely got skill talent. There's no doubt about that, really. Like, Kyle Pitts is essentially a receiver, and he could be a damn good one. Drake London's been underutilized his whole career. Bijan and Algier are good, a good running pair. So, I mean, I think it's a pretty fun job. And people say the Commanders. I just don't love that, if I'm being honest. Like, I wouldn't really want to go work for the Commanders, at least where they are right now. But
well, I mean, so much on that Commander's job, not to steal any of your thunder here, depends on what that ownership is willing to do to make that team really competitive. I mean, they traded away their 2 best defensive ends in the middle of the year. I can't remember if that was right before the new ownership group or right after the ownership group, but they're stockpiling picks to do something. So maybe they trade up and get a quarterback. Well, wait, hold on. Aren't they picking second now? I think they're picking second, actually. So, I mean, they're in range for, a top back as is. But, I mean, the big thing is the Josh Harris group in general willing to go out there and really dump a bunch of money in this team right away? Or are they going to try to maybe get by in a year where they can, draft a quarterback young, see how the team builds, and then decide whether they really want to dump money in a bunch of veteran players just around, whether it's Drake May, Caleb Williams, Jane Daniels, if you want to throw that out there too, surrounding your young quarterback with talent, which funny enough, they've got a good amount of weapons out there too. Jahan Dotson, Terry McLaurin, Diami Brown's not a bad 4th receiver. Curtis Samuel. They've got some running backs in Bijan Robinson, Antonio Gibson. They could tend to upgrade tight end. Logan Thomas is getting pretty long in the tooth now. Outside of him, John Bates, I think, is more of a blocking tight end more than anything. But I mean, offensively, weapons wise, you're not totally inept there. But
Hey, one last note on the coaches, since all the people got fired. If Belichick is in fact gone, that appears to be kind of close to certainty, the longest tenured coach in the NFL, of course, would be Mike Tomlin since 2007. Next, John Harbaugh, 2008. Andy Reid on his second team, still the third longest. Kyle Shanahan with the 49ers, 2017. McVay and Sean McDermott. All 3 of those guys came in 2017. But Sean McVay makes the list of longest tenured head coaches in the league, which is amazing to me. Feels like that was just yesterday.
But that is
it's a long time ago now, 6 or 7 years, but still, it seems the coaches turn over. Other places other than Pittsburgh, coaches turn over pretty quickly. Good to remember.
Mm-hmm.
Yep, very astute to point out. With that being said, there are plenty of coaches that are still coaching this weekend. Some teams that are vying for Super Bowl. It's time for us to determine through the wild card round, at least which one of those will advance onto the divisional round. Let's start off with a hated division rival. Cleveland is headed to Houston. Cleveland is a 2.5-point favorite. Corey, how about you get us started off on this one?
I just feel like at some point this Joe Flacco, magical run has to be stunted. I'm gonna go with my gut here. The Browns seem the better team, but I just feel like the Texans might be more rounded with coaching and talent on the offensive end. I think the Browns are, just not there with the skills offensively. You know, D'Amico's going to figure out a way to bottle up David Njoku, who's been, running wild these last few weeks. I think I'm going to go with the Texans and a nail biter, probably like a 24-21 kind of game. But I think the Browns just don't have a lot of the pieces to be super successful in the playoffs.
All right. Well,
That's funny. I think the Browns have as good a chance as anybody to come out of the AFC. They look like it looks like to me the Browns and the Ravens are playing the best ball in the AFC. It'd be a total shame if they meet next week. But I think the Browns they have a good playoff mixture. They have a running game that goes on for days. A very solid offensive line, even with the injuries, even playing like their third and fourth string guys, it seemed to work for them. They have maybe the second best defense in the league right now, and their defense is also kind of more so than in previous years. It's at all levels. Like it's a balanced good defense rather than just because they have good pass rush. And Joe Flacco has a X factor. It's like he's playing loose. He's absolutely been here before. Has had one of the great playoff runs of all time. So it's not, you can't say he can't do it. I think the Texans, it was an amazing accomplishment for them to win the division and get in the playoffs. But I think that it's sometimes teams have to come in and see what playoff football is like before they really get a chance to build on that. So more for the Texans in years to come, but not this week.
Yeah, I kind of have to. I kind of side with you, Will. If there's any repeated formula for teams going deep in the playoff, it's a good running game and a good defense, and they've got both of those right now. Not to mention, I love C.J. Stroud. He was my number one quarterback. I'm thrilled that he's playing as good as he is. This is the best defense in the NFL. That they can rush the passer, they can defend the run, they can do it all. They're fast, they're physical, they make it tough. Someone outside of Nico Collins has to step up. They are not going to let Nico Collins go off for 195 like he did against the Colts, to save them and give them some fabulous victory. So someone's going to need to step up there. Looking at you, Dalton Schultz. You can be that guy potentially. But
Tank Dell's done for the year, right?
Yeah, Dell's IR.
Yep.
He broke an ankle, I think. Yeah,
that's too bad.
Yeah, but
would have been a nice, fun matchup.
Yeah, would have. Well, and it might have even changed my perspective a little bit if you have two wide receivers that can really occupy both corners. But I just think one corner, whether it's Newsome or Ward, I don't even know who would they be playing against. Noah Brown, I think, runs outside boundary now. They've got a myriad of others, some John Mechie, some other types of stuff right there. But I like Cleveland, the well-oiled machine. And I'm going to call it right now. Elijah Moore will be the X factor this week. He and Flacco had a good connection dating back to the Jets when they were there. He really likes this kid. He's starting to heat up. I think he had like 4 balls for almost 80 yards. Not this past week, but the week before. So I think he can be a little bit of an X factor for a team that might be looking to neutralize Amari Cooper as far as the passing game goes. So watch out for that. Next one, we got a fun little matchup here because there's some storylines to this one. Miami and Tyreek Hill are traveling back to Kansas City to take on the Chiefs and Mahomes. Right now, the Chiefs are favored by 4.5 at home. Will, how about you start out with this one?
A month ago, I would have taken the Dolphins. I think they had a really good team. I just think it's kind of fallen apart with them for the injuries. But there's one reason to take the Chiefs in this game, and it's not Patrick Mahomes. It's -1 at kickoff. I know teams from cold weather, warm weather climates can go to cold weather and win. It's happened before. Drew Brees won, in an ice bowl game, etc. But I think Tua has never won a game in his whole college or actually any of his football playing career, I believe, with the temperature under 50 degrees. So -1 is a lot under 50 degrees. I'm taking the Chiefs.
Yeah. Go ahead, Corey. I'll let you go on that one.
Yeah, I mean, is it supposed to be like -1 and kind of clean in a sense? Or is it supposed to be -1 and like a dirty -1 where there's snow everywhere and there's wind? Do we know?
I'll give you that. I think it's just mostly cold. But
Yeah.
I'm looking right now. So hold on. It's going to change your pick.
Yeah, that's going to be a big factor for me. If it's like a dirty cold, I'm almost more inclined to go the Dolphins.
Is their game Saturday or Sunday?
Saturday, it's the Peacock game.
Yeah.
Oh, so it's at night, Saturday night?
Yep.
Yeah. It's a low of -6 eventually. Winds at 10 to 15 miles an hour.
That's manageable.
That's manageable. Is that what you said? Mister can't even be outside when it's under 65 degrees.
Well, for NFL teams, it's manageable. 10 to 15 miles per hour of wind is going to be cold, but like
24%, 24% chance of snow as well.
Oh, that's not very high.
No, but
yeah, I'm gonna go the Chiefs then. If it was gonna end up in like what the Bills Steelers game was supposed to be, I think I'd go the Dolphins just because I feel like they have a lot more diverse of a run game. I could see them beating the box with speed and getting to the edges and just kind of things like that. But if it's potential, like if the Chiefs can throw it all, I have a lot more faith in Patrick Mahomes making something happen than Tua. So I'm gonna go with the Chiefs here. I'll say 28 to 20. And I think that 20 is just kind of like just kind of hanging in there 20, not a late touchdown by the Chiefs.
Gotcha. I like the Chiefs here just because I think they can really hammer the ball with Pacheco. This is the type of game where Pacheco could really thrive in. And the other thing here is the Dolphins are so banged up on defense now. They just put Jerome Baker on IR. They put someone else on IR. That they are playing some like guys like way down their depth chart are starting now. So I just think I think we've seen the best of what we're going to see from the Dolphins. I'm not saying the Dolphins can't keep up because they definitely can with a guy like Tyreek, and they do. Just the most creative things to get him the ball out in space, whether, it's short, deep, whatever you want. He gets open. He always has an impact on the game. I just worry about their defense. I just don't know if they can really stop anyone. Even though I liked that team up until like a month ago, they're just really suffering when it comes to injuries. So I like the Chiefs for that reason. Let's go to Philadelphia. Philadelphia is traveling to Tampa Bay, taking on the Buccaneers. Philadelphia is an early lead with as a 3-point favorite. I'm going to take this, and I'm going to take Tampa Bay. I know it's kind of out there, but something's wrong with the Eagles. I'm not sure if anyone can really diagnose it right now, but that team just does not. It is playing the worst football at the worst time of the year. So it'll just be interesting to see if they can get that off their back. I mean, and I think the biggest thing is AJ Brown. He is like completely divided that locker room. He's clashing with the coaches. You have all that going on. I mean, even Nick Sirianni, like last week, was like, we're trying to find the answers. And it's like, you're trying to find answers this late in the year, you aren't going to get them. And not to mention that defense is just a sieve. I know they can get after the pass rusher at times, but good God, it doesn't look like they can cover anyone. James Bradbury, boy, you're getting cut at the end of the year, man. You have just been absolutely horrible, just playing. So even though Tampa Bay is not the greatest, they don't have the greatest offensive line, they do have a myriad of receivers that can challenge this team. So if Baker Mayfield gets just enough time to get the ball out there to a Mike Evans, a Godwin, a Trey Palmer, who's actually come on pretty strong for them down the stretch here. Got a few tight ends they can get involved. So I like the Bucs. It's kind of my upset of the week. So Will, I'll throw it to you next.
Yeah, I mean it's not a bad pick. I think it's one of the more interesting, harder to pick games I think at the weekend, honestly. And I'm not sure. Like I was inclined to say that Philly kind of gets back. It's sort of a get right game where they'll try to just sort of go back to basics a little bit. I have a feeling. I think that if Philly just goes back to the basics on offense, they're good enough to beat Tampa Bay. Um, I don't know. That division, it's like their record is a little like the Steelers. It's a bit of a mirage because of what their division is like. Um, I mean, the Steelers is a play for schedule, but some of those wins were like very different kind of wins, not necessarily dominating sort of wins. I am inclined. What's the spread? Let's start with that.
Well, so Philadelphia's favored by 3 going into Tampa.
Oh, I'll take Tampa in the points. I think it's a close game, and Philly may eke it out, but I'll take the points.
Okay, Corey.
I mean, I'm with you, Jeremy. I think Philly's just on a disaster track right now. There's something very wrong with what they're doing. I don't even think the solution is what Will's saying. Will, you're saying get back to the basics. They've been too basic. They're running like high school level offense and defense.
Yeah, I don't mean running the most basic thing off the running game, but I just mean more typical.
Like getting back to the basics for them would be like diversifying their offense back to like an RPO system, how they had with Steichen. And I just don't think they have the brain power in that organization right now to do it.
Yeah, they don't have the same. You're right. You're right that they don't have the same people in house to do it. So maybe they're getting back to that old look.
There's a good chance that they could out talent the Bucks and even win big, but I just think they've looked so bad. I mean, like if you look at their last 6 games, lost to the Giants, lost to the Cardinals, they beat the Giants. That was a narrow win. Lost to the Seahawks, lost to the Cowboys, blown out by the 49ers. So since that 49ers game, they have looked just bad. Not even like okay, they've looked bad. So I just don't.
By the way, they're we're talking about fixing their offense, but as Jeremy said, their defense is like their offense actually respectably is 10th in the league overall for the season, 29th on offense and on defense in DVOA. So Philly's defense has really been the problem, which doesn't make any sense. But I think it's that they just had a run, and they're coming off that run now. They've lost a couple of pieces here and there. Before you know it, it's rebuild time.
I don't even know if it's necessarily rebuild time. It seems like they really like misdiagnosed their replacements for the OC and DC. I mean, you look at where those guys went. Gannon and Steichen had decent success. I mean, Gannon was laughed at when he was hired. He had a damn good defense, especially towards the back half of the year. And if you look, Steichen almost dragged that Colts team with Gardner Minshew to the playoffs. I mean, Gardner Minshew is a better backup. He's supposed to have Anthony Richardson off the jump, and with Anthony Richardson, they looked good. Like Anthony Richardson was on pace for a lot of touchdowns. So, I mean, I'm not saying it's easy to replace those guys, but it looks like they just did not do a good job in replacing those guys.
Maybe they should just do the brotherly shove every play. They might make it.
Yeah, I mean, 0.4 yards carried to get a first down on each one of them.
Every once in a while, fake an end around from it. Like it might work. The single
like revert back to the wing T.
Yeah, that's it.
I'll tell you what, that's one sure way to get Jason Kelsey to retire at the end of this year if they have to go brotherly
shove every play.
But fun little anecdote there. Let's go to another fun one. This probably is the best storyline of them all. The Rams are headed to Detroit. The 2 QBs that were traded for one another are playing off against each other. And Stafford is returning to Detroit as a Ram, and Goff is there already. Detroit is at home. They are favored by 3. Corey, I'll let you start off on this one.
I like Detroit, and I like their team overall a little more. They've dealt with a couple injuries that have been kind of tough for them to get over on the defensive end. Mm-hmm. And the Rams are buzzing. I mean, they are hot right now. So, I mean, if you look at how, we were talking about the Eagles, how they just are not playing good football. It's the opposite for the Rams. They lost. I mean, you look at their record. Beat the Seahawks, beat the Cardinals, blew out the Browns, lost by 6 to the Ravens in a shootout, which that's not a bad loss at all. And then they handled business towards the end of their schedule where they beat the Commanders, beat the Saints, beat the Giants, and then they narrowly beat the 49ers, which even that's like the Ravens, even thin and backups for the 49ers. That's still not a bad team.
Yeah.
And I didn't watch that game, but they might have been playing a lot of their starters too. I'm not really sure on the 49ers. So, it's just
not so much. Yeah.
yeah. But so, you still look at it. It's just they're playing great football right now. The Lions have been a little inconsistent as of late. They've got some injuries. The Rams have all their weapons right now. I'm taking the Rams here.
Well,
Yeah, the first home playoff game for the Detroit Lions in 30 years. So the crowd is going to be insanity. But yeah, it's sort of like I feel like if this game were played a month or two ago, it's easy. It would be easy to pick Detroit. Detroit, the beginning of the season looked great, but there's sort of a below the radar theme that Detroit has had this year is that they have looked really great in close losses, and I think that sometimes tends to sway people's opinions about a team of, if they're really good because you had to really work hard to beat them. But I think some of that is, like I said, learning how to be great, not just the players, but the coaches. I felt like the whole debacle against Dallas was an example of the coach, outsmarting himself and the coach having to learn the time to be for subterfuge and a time to just make sure all the details are taken care of, right? I think this game is going to be sort of a bloodbath. I expect it to be very, very close. I also think the fans are going to go home disappointed that the Rams will narrowly win this game. Part of that reason is, in a sort of neutral scenario, I like Jared Goff, okay, but I feel like in some of the bigger games of his career, in the playoffs, he has been very disturbed by pressure and also disturbed by coverage. It seems to be reluctant to take chances with the football. And I think when you're in a playoff game against a really good opponent, you can't afford to play that way. You can't play scared. So I will take the Rams to narrowly win versus Detroit.
Yeah, I truly think this is going to come down to who has the ball less. I'm not sure if I really see either defense really slowing, either of these guys down. Both of these offenses are just electric in that sense. So I tend to agree with you guys. I called the Rams a sneaky playoff team. If they were to get in a few weeks back with some other friends of mine, I'm going to stay on that because, like Corey said, they're healthy. That's the biggest thing. All around healthy. So that's a big deal. And both these quarterbacks are going to be very motivated, to go out there and prove that, I'm going to beat the guy I got traded for. I just feel like Stafford might just do a little bit more. I think he's the better overall quarterback. I don't think there's any I don't think there's much of a dispute there. Stafford's being talked about as a potential Hall of Fame quarterback, with the Super Bowl win a few years back. So I like the Rams here. Fun game to watch. This will be the game to watch if you really want a good one to watch this weekend, especially if you're a fan of offense. Let's
take the over.
Yeah, for real. Take the over. Let's go one more before we get to our 5-star matchup of the week. We got the second to last wildcard game. Green Bay is headed to Dallas. Dallas, with a win last week, holds the number 2 seed, so they will be at home through the playoffs as long as they continue to win until they play San Fran, which, if so, will just be fun to watch in its own right. But Dallas at home is favored by 7.5. They are pretty unbeatable at home. Will start with this one? I believe Will.
Yeah, I'll take it. Nice story for Green Bay, and Jordan Love, I think, has shown flashes of some really good football this year. He still has some things that he'll have to improve on, but I felt like when Green Bay started the year, they weren't thinking they would be a playoff team. I think they were sort of very young and on their way up, and they, compared to that team that played against the Steelers even midway through the season, I feel like they've gotten a lot better. But yeah, this is a tall order to go to Dallas where they play well against a team that's pretty stacked. So I will take Dallas. I kind of feel like the Dallas San Francisco game is sort of inevitable that we're going to be seeing it somewhere down the road.
Gotcha. Corey?
Yeah, Green Bay, I think, needs another year or two just of free agent guys and drafts. I'm just not sure their roster can match what Dallas has right now. I mean, if you look at Dallas compared to the rest of the NFC, they look strong, just straight up. I think Dallas wins this at home handily. Maybe not like a blowout, but a win where they don't really have to hold their breath too much.
Gotcha. Yeah. I do think it'll be interesting just see what weapons are available out there for Green Bay again. Sounds like Romeo Dobbs could be back as well as Christian Watson. When this kid plays, he is very tough to cover just because of his side and speed ability. Honestly, you've seen a little bit of Jaden Reed take over that role in this offense just because he's got the speed to really go out there and do some things. Jaden Reed has played excellent football for Green Bay the past, really over the last month. Just phenomenal play for a rookie wide receiver. But I just don't feel like Green Bay's offensive line can hold up against Detroit 7. And Micah Parsons, I'd be lining him up over Rasheed Walker every snap of the game. Rasheed Walker is an absolute turnstile if you get him on his heels. And Parsons does that to everyone. So why not? But yeah, I think that's the biggest difference here. I do think it'll be interesting to see how Dallas's offensive line holds up because Green Bay's actually been able to rush the passer pretty well in these past few weeks. Albeit not against the greatest competition. They've been fun to watch from that perspective. So I think it'll be a closer game. 7.5 probably sounds about right. I'll still take Dallas to win and cover there. That brings us to our last playoff game, our 5-star matchup. Your Pittsburgh Steelers are heading up to frigid Buffalo. I will say right now, I'm going to start. I ended on this, so I could start off on this. Right now, go out there and place this bet. The Bills right now are favored to win by 10 points. I will tell you right now, if the weather stays as shitty as we expect it to, winning by 10 could be a damn feat, just from a weather perspective alone. So I like Pittsburgh to cover, but not win. I think we'll have some success running the ball. Don't think we'll put up a lot of points in this type of a game. They might not put up a lot of points either. I sure as hell don't see them winning by 10. We would have to really go out there and lay a goose egg to lose by 10. So Pittsburgh to cover. Throw it to you, Will.
A couple things. The Steelers without TJ Watt are 1-10.
Fair enough.
The Steelers against, in the playoffs the last few years in the opening round have been ugly. And the point spreads that they've given up make 10 look like, a close game. Thirdly, the 7th seed, since they started this format with the 1 and the 7, has never won a game. As far as I can recall, they haven't even made it close. So I think there's a big advantage for the 2 seed. There's the way the NFL is, it's like there's 20 teams that are worse than, 9-8, and there are 13 teams, whatever, 10 teams that are better than 9-8. So it's kind of like that 9-8 record, or 10-7 record feels like it's an more or less average. So there could be some swing here with the weather, but I kind of feel like trying to stop the quarterback from running the football for Buffalo is going to be a problem because even if Josh Allen doesn't throw it very much, they can still score a lot of points and can still move the football consistently. So I trust it. Like I should have listened to you guys earlier in the year when you were talking about trends. The Steelers don't lose 3 games in a row under Mike Tomlin. He always figures out a way to win these late season games to get to never had a losing season. And you're talking about the Ravens. We always do well against the Ravens, etc. So I would really like to try to find some good trends in this game, but it just feels like it's working against the Steelers. I think that the Bills will win and cover, and I will call it 24-10.
So Corey, before you hop on, I realized I did not pick a score for this, so I'm going to go. Sorry, Will. What'd you predict?
24-10 Buffalo.
All right, I was kind of thinking 17-10, low scoring, not a lot of traction done. So 17-10 is my pick. Corey, finish us off here, buddy.
Yeah, I'm just gonna say my score first. I'm gonna go 17-3 Buffalo. I've been more of the optimistic one when talking about the possibilities of the weather, and I still agree with that. But if you look at Buffalo's scores this year, they've scored less than 17 points twice all year, and one was week 1, second was week 5. So since week 5, they have scored not just over 17, pretty much they scored 20 once and then over 21, 24, and everything else was higher after that. That's a good offensive team. I just don't see us having the juice to keep up with them. I would say that we probably flounder some red zone opportunities with our lack of willingness to go for it, especially in a dirty weather game like this. And Buffalo's just got a significant like short yardage edge with Josh Allen. So 17-3 is my pick. I would love it if the Steelers won, but there's just a lot of issues with the roster still. We lost to 2-2-10 teams just a very short time ago. We kind of ran the ball into the playoffs, but I am with Will that I don't think we'll be able to run it against them, even if the weather nerfs their offense a little bit.
All right. Well, hate to see it, say it, Steeler fans, but we're not predicting a win.
Yeah, I mean, here's the thing: if they win, they'll earn it. They're playing a good team uh, on the road in the playoffs. So yeah, it is the kind of game that's a great test, and just to really see where you are. But I mean, just look in your crystal ball back to going to Kansas City, you know, going to New England, going to like the top teams in the league when the Steelers have not had what you would think is an elite team, even though it's a playoff game and they earned their way into the playoffs. Not all playoff teams are created equally.
Yeah, that's an understatement.
Yeah.
Well, and especially we didn't really talk about it, but Mason Rudolph is, he is who he is. He's had
Hey, but given the opportunity, he did a lot with it.
he
He
did.
probably earned himself a contract somewhere next year, whether it's in Pittsburgh or to be the backup or elsewhere, or even to be the gap starter in Pittsburgh if they move on from Kenny Pickett. So
How big of a joke is it that we got that report that Kenny Pickett is still viewed as the 2024 face of the franchise, and we haven't started him for 2 weeks now because he isn't better than Mason Rudolph.
Yeah.
telling you, man, that's the
Volumes.
kiss of death. If your team doesn't start you in a playoff game, that it couldn't be more do or die. Then maybe they thought they could beat the Ravens with the backup quarterback because the Ravens were playing their backups or whatever. But if you're not playing Kenny Pickett in the playoffs in a must-win game, I think that says more than words.
Yeah. So, well, with that being said, we're all gonna, cross our fingers, hope for the
Yeah,
best.
man.
It's one of those things where we kind of felt how the season was gonna go on, and
Wouldn't it be great? By the way, wouldn't it be great to see Mike Tomlin come out and be like as out of character as Bill Cowher seemed to be that 2005 playoff run? Where they came out throwing. I mean, this game may not be the game to be like super aggressive and attacking, but would it just feel good to feel like they had the game planned well and they found some weaknesses and they build off them with the play calling and just do something that inspires us to want to talk about them more and to start to feel like they could really go places. I maybe an ugly win is good enough this week.
yeah.
But yeah, because it gets them back to Baltimore where they've had some success against the Ravens, even when the Ravens are good.
I was
So
just about ready to say a surprise win would send them back to Baltimore, where they just snuck out a victory, against a bunch of backups. We haven't played in full force since what was that, week 7 or something like that, pretty early in the year. Where
you could have Buffalo, Baltimore, and Cleveland, and totally miss Patrick Mahomes, which would be amazing.
yeah, but well, one last question, just because it's breaking news right now, and I know you guys follow the college game really well. Nick Saban retiring away from Alabama. Throwing it out to both of you because you guys follow the game probably even closer than I do. Who is your pick to replace Nick Saban?
Ooh, well, let me go first because Corey's going to have 5 names that are better than anybody else. Uh boy, because you have to think about it in terms of being really like dynastic, somebody that's going to be there for a long time. I find it hard to believe that Alabama would pick someone that isn't a sure thing. Um, would it be weird? Like I don't remember I know there were problems with his career earlier, but Sarkeesian
In
is that
Texas,
crazy? Is that was
he,
that like
Texas,
did he have some kind of scandal?
he
Yeah,
had
at
a
some point.
drinking thing. He had a drinking
Oh
thing.
yeah, well maybe not the easiest choice then for them to take. But yeah, I feel like though that's a guy that is the right age and the right kind of success track record. Like trying to think about who Nick Saban was when he got the job.
Mhm.
But yeah, I don't know. It's tough. I think being a dynasty in college football is tougher and tougher now because of the portal and NIL deals and whatever. It's like it's not an easy time. You can't just stockpile running backs at Georgia, or defensive linemen or whatever, right? So,
Right.
what do you think?
Corey,
What do you think, Corey?
yeah, Corey,
Yeah. Uh,
before you hype on here, I would laugh my ass off if they went out and hired Sarkeesian for Texas to be joining the SEC, lose their coach, and who knows, God, what happens after that. Yeah, that might be a real shit show. Texas coming in, just losing their head coach, getting ready to start in the SEC. Who knows what players will declare? Who knows? But boy, that would be an interesting one. Corey, I didn't mean to cut you off. Go ahead, buddy.
I think the big one is Dan Lanning. He's had a lot of success at Oregon, and he has the SEC kind of pedigree. I think he started as a GA for Alabama, but I know his main thing was that he's a DC at Georgia. He's young, for this big of a job. I'd say people have been talking about Kalen DeBoer as like the Washington guy. I don't really see it. I don't really see Dion. It wouldn't shock me if Alabama did something crazy and went for Urban Meyer. That wouldn't blow me away. Dabo getting out of the ACC wouldn't shock me either, but I think Dan Lanning is definitely my first assumption. Harbaugh, I mean, I brought it up to you guys. Everyone thinks Harbaugh is going to the NFL. Harbaugh going to Alabama, I don't think is outlandish either.
No, that was the first name that Jeremy said earlier, and I could see that. By the way, Lanning was a graduate assistant at Alabama in 2015.
I was about ready to say Lanning was on there. I remember that.
Okay.
His pedigree.
But basically, like he's very new to coaching. Like that would be he's had a lot of success at Oregon, but that would be a real, that's like picking Chuck Noll to be the Pittsburgh Steelers coach or Bill Cowher when they did, or Mike Tomlin when they did. So it's bold, but if it works out great.
Mm-hmm. Now, kind of have an outside theory here, just because this coach is going to become available, if New England gets let go. Any chance Bill O'Brien kind of just comes back and kind of takes over as the head guy with the offense that he had that was so successful down there and just kind of just steps in, kind of keeps things going the way they have been, I mean, he's not the world's greatest college football coach out there, don't get me wrong, but he had a few years where, his offense, really got Alabama, on the more evolutionary side of the game, got him out of just the ground and pound stuff that Nick Saban loved so much to do. I mean, I don't know. It all depends or whatever. Obviously, Jalen Miller would absolutely hate that decision. But I don't know. It's just an intriguing name, because if, like we all expect Bill Belichick to leave here, or leave on his own terms, get fired, whatever, he becomes available. He's looking for a job. He has the experience. He's been there. I don't know. Might just be easy to slide him into place. Not saying that should be the move, but it's an interesting idea.
Can I throw a name at you?
Sure, why
You're
not?
gonna love this. Ready?
Is it going to be Mike Tomlin?
It's going to be Mike Tomlin. Like
Okay.
if you think about it,
Ooh.
Mike Tomlin is the perfect choice to be the Alabama head football coach. I mean, he is going to bring in, he can win any recruit that you want to get into the house. Like Saban, he's at least known as a defensive-minded coach, so you're always going to sort of have you're going to recruit well, the best. You're going to play good defense, and you're going to keep games close and figure out how to win. His record winning close games. And as Jeremy pointed out earlier, he's still a pretty young guy. So he may be younger than Saban was when he took over the Alabama job. So
Now, I'll say this: if Harbaugh leaves, I would almost guess that Tomlin would be more likely to take the Michigan job than the Alabama job. From what I know, Tomlin really was never down south ever in his life. He's been a northern guy through and through.
Virginia.
And
Yeah.
he is known for liking, the Michigan guys, and he's talked highly of Michigan before. I would almost lean more towards him going to Michigan if he wants to slide down to college than Alabama.
but Michigan seems like a step down from Pittsburgh. Going to be the replace Nick Saban at Alabama is like at minimum a lateral move.
That's a legacy move up too. I mean, that's like, Michigan's cool, but it's just kind of Michigan. Alabama's, Bear Bryant, Nick Saban.
Yeah.
And maybe this is the way I view it, but I just, unless you're built for the college game, I think you have a tough time going from the NFL to college right now. College football like the recruiting cycle is such a shit show with the transfer portal, all these different things or whatever. It's like, do you want to really take that step to where you're recruiting kids 365 days a year? I don't know.
Well,
I just have a hard time feeling like
if you're him, maybe you do because that's what he likes to do.
I don't know. I just have a tough time seeing any accomplished NFL coach really wanting to do that. But
let's put it this way. Would we be more surprised if he went to Alabama or the Commanders after this year?
Bama. I'd be more surprised if he went to Alabama.
I'd be more surprised if he left the NFL. But I mean, if he goes somewhere other than the NFL or television, then I feel like Alabama would be like it sounds wild, but it's in a way it almost fits. A lot of the strengths that he has, let's put it that way.
Has anyone seen who the Commanders have really interviewed?
Not yet. So, I mean, they hired those two GMs, Rick Spielman, who used to be a GM with the Vikings, and then, I can't remember the other one because he's not
Bob Myers. He is the former Golden State Warriors GM. He is I'm not sure how well it translates to football, but I know that dude put together a dynasty. He's going to be organized and he's going to know how to talk to people.
Sure. So, and I know you guys mentioned Tomlin going to the media for a year. God, I would shudder to watch that. How many obviously's, and we'd have to come up with a big time drinking game if we watched that. I mean, how many puns we could get off. I mean, the press conferences alone, or the checklists of Tomlinisms. Good Lord, you give him a whole hour every week. Ugh, man, that sounds cringy. But regardless, we'll see what he does this weekend. Still a game to be played. So, thank you very much,
Jeremy. Sorry, just before you sign off, one last thought on this Tomlin to Alabama thing. Has Alabama ever had an African American head football coach?
There's no way, right?
I mean, because think about that. You want to talk about legacy?
Well, Bear Bryant was there for such a long time.
Yeah, I don't think they have.
Yeah.
So that's just like I said.
Right now.
File that away. Legacy.
Interesting.
Sorry, man. Go ahead. You finish your show.
No worries. Thanks again, Steeler fans, for tuning in to another episode here at the SteelerFury.com podcast. I'm your host, Jeremy Coleman. Smith is smoking on the message boards, joined by my colleagues Will Masek, as Bradshaw to Ben, and Corey Karbowski, almost Corey 39. As Roger Wood would sing it, here we go, Steelers to the Super Bowl.
Yeah, exactly. I don't know. Maybe we'll be back talking about a playoff victory. It's been a while on the show. Yeah. You guys were born.
Yeah. Well, I'll tell you what. I've never heard a Roger Wood "Here We Go" song that didn't include a quarterback. So
sad times, man.
That's the first.
But Kenny's still number one.
Yeah, Kenny's still one. Thank you, Steeler fans. Enjoy football this weekend, and who knows? We could be talking about a surprise win next week or recapping a very long offseason.